I always thought the hardest part of burying a man would be the grief, but I was wrong. The hardest part is learning, in front of a room full of people, that you didn't really know the man at all. It happened on a warm Thursday morning, the kind of day where the sun feels too bright for morning. We were at St. Vincent's Chapel, surrounded by lilies and low murmurs, when the door creaked open and a woman walked in. She wore black, like the rest of us, and held the hands of 2 children. They were quiet, eyes wide, as if they weren't sure they were allowed to be there. She waited until the priest stepped back from the pulpit. Then she spoke. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said. Her voice was steady, clear, "but I need to say something before this goes any further." She took a step closer to the front, toward the casket. "I'm his wife, too." There was a pause, one of those awful, charged pauses, when it feels like the air gets sucked out of the room. People turned, heads tilted. Someone gasped. One of my husband's cousins muttered, "Jesus Christ," under his breath, and I just sat there, still, frozen. My son Elijah was beside me. His hand gripped mine under the pew. She kept going. "My name is Mariah. These are our children." She looked straight at me. Not smug, not apologetic. "I'm not here to fight, but I deserve to be acknowledged." My husband had been buried for exactly 23 minutes, and already, the truth was rising up through the dirt like it couldn't stay quiet anymore. Before anyone could respond, before the priest could intervene, or my mother-in-law could start one of her whispered campaigns, Elijah stood up. He didn't speak. He just reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed, thick, clearly aged. He walked past the row of mourners and approached Mr. Helbert, the family lawyer. He held the letter out. "My dad told me to give you this," Elijah said softly. "If anything ever happened, and especially if she showed up." The room went still, again. Utter stillness. No one moved. No one breathed. Mr. Helbert looked from Elijah to me. I shook my head. I didn't know about the letter. I didn't know about any of it. He broke the seal, and that's when everything, my marriage, my family, my sense of reality, began to unravel. The room fell silent. "My name is Dana. I'm 52 years old. And I buried my husband Marcus on a Thursday morning, wearing the same navy dress I wore to his promotion dinner 10 years ago. We were married for 22 years, at least, I thought we were. Until that woman stood up at his funeral, with her children, and called herself his wife too. Marcus wasn't a perfect man, but he was the kind of man who made people believe he had it all under control. He was charming, commanding, the kind of person who walked into a room and made it feel like a stage. People listened when he spoke, especially me. Maybe that was my mistake. I listened more than I asked. I believed more than I questioned. Our marriage was steady for the first decade. We had our routines. Sunday pancakes, late-night reruns, polite arguments that never got too loud. When Elijah was born, Marcus cried harder than I did. I remember the way he held him, like he'd been waiting his whole life for something pure to protect. And for a while, he was that father. Present, proud, involved. But somewhere along the line, something changed. It was subtle at first, business trips that ran longer, phone calls he took behind closed doors, a new lock on the home office drawer. He was still affectionate, still kissed me goodnight, still showed up to school plays, but there was a distance, like he was always half in another world. I asked him once if everything was okay. He smiled and said I was imagining things, that work was just heavier these days. I wanted to believe him, so I did. The shift didn't just happen in our marriage, it crept into our home. Family dinners became quieter. He stopped asking Elijah about his drawings, his math tests. I noticed, of course I noticed. But when you love someone, you tell yourself they're just going through something, that it'll pass, that you don't push too hard, because love is patient, love is trusting. Or maybe I was just afraid of what I might find if I really looked. Marcus's family always adored him. His mother, Barbara, practically worshipped the ground he walked on. She tolerated me, never embraced me. At gatherings, she'd ask Elijah if he missed his real family, as if I'd somehow cut him off from their bloodline by raising him with structure and boundaries. She used to say I'd softened Marcus too much, that he used to be more ambitious before I came along. I learned to stay quiet, smile, keep the peace for Elijah's sake. And Elijah, he was always watching, too observant for a child. He noticed the cold silences between us, the way Marcus's eyes flicked away during conversations. Once, he asked me why Dad always left when it was time to clean up. I told him, grown-ups get tired too. But the truth was, I didn't know anymore. In the last year of Marcus's life, things got stranger. He became forgetful in a way that didn't match his sharpness. He'd leave papers in odd places, put his phone face down, even around Elijah, take late-night walks without explanation. Once, I found a photograph tucked in a drawer, a picture of a lake I didn't recognize, with handwriting on the back that said, "Our place." I wanted to ask. I should have asked. But I didn't. We never had a final talk. No confession. No last-minute truth. Just a hospital bed, a quiet breath, and a doctor saying it was over. Lung complications, they said. Quick, but not sudden. I spent 3 days planning a funeral he never spoke of, choosing hymns he never sang, reading sympathy cards from people who thought they knew him. And Elijah barely spoke. He stayed close, helped me fold the suits, carried tissues in his pockets like he knew I'd forget mine. But what I didn't know, not until that moment in the chapel, was that my son had been holding a secret of his own. He had a letter, a sealed letter, given to him by his father, with instructions. And the woman who interrupted my husband's funeral, she wasn't there by accident. The day of the funeral started quiet. Too quiet. Elijah and I got ready in silence, both of us moving around our small kitchen, like ghosts trying not to wake something fragile. He wore the navy suit we bought last winter, the one he insisted made him look older. Guy ironed his shirt twice, just to keep my hands busy. I hadn't eaten much in days, but I drank 2 cups of coffee just to keep from feeling hollow. We arrived early, before the guests. The chapel smelled of old wood, lilies, and lemon oil. The casket was closed. I didn't ask for it to be. Marcus's mother did. She said it was more dignified. I let it go. I was too tired to argue, too numb to push back. The first people to arrive were Marcus's business associates. They came in pairs, wearing sharp suits and practiced grief. I recognized a few. Men who always looked at me like I was just the woman behind the curtain, the one who answered the door but never entered the conversation. Then came the cousins, the distant relatives, the neighbors who waved at us on holidays. The room filled slowly, until it buzzed with the low hum of polite condolences and whispered theories. Marcus's mother arrived late, swept in like royalty. She wore black velvet, a hat with a netted veil, and a look that told everyone she was the one to console. She kissed my cheek without meeting my eyes, and moved straight to the front row. Elijah and I sat behind her, not beside, behind. That was how it had always been. Appearances came first. When the service began, the priest kept things short, a few words about strength, family, and the mystery of loss. He didn't know Marcus well, so his eulogy sounded like it had been copied from a church bulletin. I didn't mind. At least it was quiet. Then came the open floor. If anyone wishes to say a few words, the priest offered. I stayed seated. I had written something, a small page folded in my purse, but I hadn't decided whether to read it. I wasn't sure anyone wanted to hear what the wife of a distant man had to say. Marcus's younger brother spoke briefly about growing up with him. A co-worker made a joke about Marcus's terrible golf swing. The room laughed politely. Elijah stayed still beside me, eyes focused forward, hands folded tightly in his lap. And then she stood up. From the back row, the woman rose with quiet confidence. She wasn't overdressed. Simple black dress. No jewelry, her hair pulled back. But the way she walked to the front, it was like she knew she had the floor. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said calmly, "but I need to say something before this goes any further." There was a ripple across the pews. Heads turned. Eyes narrowed. The room shifted, like everyone could sense something was about to happen, but no one knew what. "My name is Mariah," she said. "These are my children." She placed a hand gently on each of their shoulders. 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl, maybe 16 or 17. They looked down, not in shame, but in discomfort, like they weren't new to being hidden. "I'm his wife too." The words hit like glass shattering on marble, sharp, sudden, impossible to ignore. A low gasp ran through the crowd. The priest froze, mid-step. Marcus's mother turned in her seat, with the slow, deliberate motion of a woman preparing to strike. "I'm not here to make a scene," Mariah continued. "I'm here because Marcus made promises, to me, and to them. I didn't want to do this, but I was left no choice." She pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse, a marriage certificate. She held it out for the lawyer to see. The crowd stirred. Someone near the back whispered, "Is this real?" I sat there, unable to speak, unable to think. I could feel the heat rushing to my face, my chest tightening like it was collapsing inward. Marcus's mother stood abruptly. "This is absurd," she said. That paper means nothing. My son would never. But she was cut off by movement from beside me. Elijah stood. He didn't say a word. He reached into his coat and took out a letter. Yellowed, creased, sealed. He walked past the rows of chairs, past his grandmother, past Mariah, and stopped in front of Mr. Halbert. He held out the envelope. My dad gave me this, he said quietly. Told me to give it to you. If someone claimed to be his wife, someone else. You could hear the air leave the room. Mr. Halbert took the letter. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. He read the first few lines, then looked at Elijah, then at me. His face changed. Something shifted. Recognition, maybe. Guilt. Sadness. This is real, he said, clearing his throat. This changes everything. The silence that followed was louder than any outburst could have been. The tension didn't crack. It calcified. People didn't move. They stared at each other, like they were trying to understand who they had really come to mourn. I sat back slowly, my hands folded in my lap. My heart was pounding. Not from rage, not even from shock. From something deeper, something older. Like a truth I had buried long ago was clawing its way to the surface. The letter was real, and Marcus had known this day would come. Mr. Halbert adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat again, this time with the gravity of someone who had just been handed a truth too heavy to ignore. He looked out over the chapel, his voice steady but low, like he was speaking in a courtroom. I have been instructed, he said, by Mr. Marcus Ellison, to read this letter aloud in the event that a secondary claim to his estate, or to his identity, is made in public or legal context. The envelope is dated 2 years ago. Signed, notarized. People shifted in their seats. A woman in the third row covered her mouth. Marcus's mother sat rigid, arms crossed, her eyes locked on the letter, like she could will it shut with her glare. Mr. Halbert unfolded the pages carefully. They were handwritten, not typed. The slant of Marcus's writing was unmistakable, leaning slightly to the right, like he was always in a hurry to finish what he started. The lawyer began to read. If you're hearing this, I've failed. Failed to be the kind of man I once promised 2 families I could be. Failed to end this properly in life, and now I've left it for the living to clean up. For that, I am ashamed. To Dana, my wife, my first, my only legal wife, I owe everything. You gave me 22 years of your life, your trust, and your grace. You raised our son with strength I often pretended to possess but rarely earned. I did not honor you the way I should have. There is no excuse for the choices I made, only explanation. My ears rang. I couldn't move. Elijah didn't look at me. He looked straight ahead, listening, absorbing every word. I could see his jaw set, his fists clenched softly at his sides. To Mariah, the woman I fell into when I was already broken, what we had was real in its own way. But I should never have made you believe it could exist in daylight. I told you lies I told myself. That's not love. That's cowardice. I led you down a path I had no right to build. To both sets of children. If you ever meet one another, I hope you'll have more strength than I did. You deserve the truth. You deserve better. The room was so still, I could hear the hum of the overhead lights. No one coughed. No one stirred. I couldn't tell if people were stunned, or ashamed, or just frozen by the weight of what they were witnessing. Then came the part that made the air change. As for my estate, all assets, properties, savings, and insurance policies are to be transferred to Dana Ellison and our son Elijah. This includes all jointly held accounts, all items of legal title, and all intellectual property. I have made separate arrangements for any other parties privately, but nothing should supersede this decision. There is only one legal marriage in my life. It is to the woman who stayed, the woman I failed, the woman I still looked for in every act of good I tried to do, even when I was no longer worthy of her. Dana, you never needed to forgive me, but I needed you to know that I saw you. I saw what you carried, and I see it now, even from the dark. Mr. Halbert paused. He lowered the pages slowly, his fingers trembling slightly. No one said a word. Marcus's mother stood abruptly. That's not binding, she barked, voice cracking. That's not. He was confused. He wasn't in his right mind. But no one responded. Not even her own relatives. Their silence was louder than any argument. Mariah stood still. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She simply gathered her papers back into her purse, placed a hand on each of her children's shoulders, and took a step back. Her face was unreadable. Her eyes met mine for only a second, then lowered. The lawyer cleared his throat one last time. All documents are filed. Legal. Verified. He looked at me. He made sure of it. I don't remember standing. I don't remember sitting either. All I could feel in that moment was the cold, slow wave of something I hadn't felt in years. Not vindication, not relief, recognition. Marcus hadn't protected me while he was alive, but in the one moment that would outlive him, he made sure the truth had the last word. The letter changed everything, but it didn't change the room right away. There's a strange silence that follows a reckoning. Like everyone is waiting to see how they're supposed to react. Some guests glanced around awkwardly, avoiding my eyes. Others looked down into their laps, as if studying their own hands might protect them from guilt by proximity. No one clapped. No one cried. The air just sat there, heavy and still. Marcus's mother was the first to break. "This is absurd," she said sharply. Her voice was tight, desperate. He was under stress, probably manipulated. Dana must have... She didn't finish the sentence. The lawyer turned toward her, lips pressed together in a line of quiet finality. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The documents were clear. Her power in the room had vanished. Just like that. I stood slowly, not because I had something dramatic to say, not because I wanted the spotlight. I just couldn't sit there any longer, frozen in a pew that suddenly felt like a cage. I looked around, not with triumph, with something simpler. Stillness. Clarity. "I didn't write the letter," I said. My voice was calm, even. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know about her, or then. I knew my husband was drifting, but I didn't know how far he had gone. No one interrupted. No one tried to stop me. I showed up today to bury a man I lived beside for 2 decades. I didn't come here to win anything. I came because I thought I owed him a proper goodbye. But now I realize he was never mine to begin with. Not fully. Maybe not even partly. I paused and looked toward Mariah. Her eyes met mine this time. There was no anger in them, no apology either. Just an understanding between 2 women who had both loved a man who divided his heart like a ledger. "I don't blame her," I said, gently. "I blame him. And I forgive myself for trusting too long, hoping too long, staying too long. That's all I came to say." I turned to Elijah. His face was calm, unreadable, in that way teenage boys learn to protect their mothers. He stepped forward and took my hand. And with that, we left. No dramatic exit, no stares over the shoulder, just a mother and son walking down the aisle of a chapel that had become something else. A courtroom, a stage, a battlefield, and stepping out into the afternoon light. Outside, the air was crisp and clear. Elijah took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Did you know about the letter?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "Not really. He gave it to me in an envelope, said it was important, said to give it to Mr. Halbert if things ever got confusing." He looked up at me. I guess he knew they would. We didn't talk much on the ride home. We didn't have to. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was something closer to peace. The next day, the phone calls started. A few from cousins, 1 from a neighbor, 2 from people I didn't recognize, who had heard about what happened. I let them go to voicemail. Later that week, a video began circulating. Someone had recorded the moment Elijah handed the lawyer the letter, the moment Mr. Halbert read Marcus's words out loud. It spread, first among friends of friends, then across Facebook, then further. By the end of the week, there were thousands of comments. "This boy protected his mother's dignity in silence. Every single mom deserves a moment like this. The truth always finds a way." I didn't respond to any of it, but I read every word. Elijah saw the comments too. I caught him reading them on his phone one night, curled on the couch with a blanket over his feet. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, then he looked up. "Mum," he said, "you didn't lose, not even a little." I smiled at him, and something inside me finally loosened. Not joy, not pride, something deeper, relief. Because this time, I hadn't had to scream to be believed. It's been 6 months since the funeral. There was no second service, no public apology, no follow-up statement from Marcus's family. The video of that day eventually stopped circulating, replaced by newer scandals and fresher griefs. But it didn't disappear, and neither did the shift it created inside me. The house feels different now. Not because he's gone. He had been gone, in a way, for years. But because the lies are no longer breathing through the walls. I moved Elijah's desk into Marcus's old study. We filled the drawers with pencils, sketch pads, and comic books. It's his space now. Honest. Lived in. Real. Marcus's mother hasn't called. Not once. I heard through a mutual cousin that she blamed me for the fallout. Claimed I manipulated the narrative. I didn't respond. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone. Mariah didn't reach out either, and I'm not sure I would have answered if she had. I don't hate her. I don't pity her. I simply don't carry the weight of her choices, or Marcus's, any longer. I hope her children are okay. I hope they grow up to be stronger than the man who fractured us all. Elijah changed too. He speaks more now. Not often, but when he does, it's with a certainty that wasn't there before. He asks big questions about integrity, about family, about the difference between silence and peace. He still keeps the envelope, tucked inside a book on his shelf, not as a weapon, but as a reminder. One evening, I found him in the living room, lining up his action figures in rows. Like an audience, he stood before them holding a pencil like a microphone. "And that's why we always tell the truth," he said in a firm voice, "even if it's uncomfortable." I didn't interrupt. I just watched. Later that night, while we brushed our teeth, he glanced up at me in the mirror. "Mom," he asked, "do you think Dad loved you?" I rinsed my mouth and took a breath before answering. "I think your father loved parts of me," I said. "But I don't think he ever learned how to love fully, not without hiding something." Elijah nodded, like he'd expected that answer. Then he wiped toothpaste from his chin and said, "I think you love better than he did." That stayed with me, because for all the things Marcus left undone, for all the cracks he left behind, the one thing he gave me in the end was space to stop hiding, not behind marriage, not behind guilt, and not behind shame. I don't pretend that day at the funeral erased the betrayal. It didn't, but it gave the truth a voice. And sometimes, that's all you need to stop carrying the lies. I still work full-time. I still pay bills. I still get tired, but I carry myself differently now. I no longer enter rooms like I owe someone an apology for surviving. I no longer feel small when people ask, "How did you manage everything alone?" Because I didn't just survive. I endured. I raised a boy who became a young man with a spine and a soul. I lived with dignity, even when the people around me tried to twist my story into shame. And when the moment came, when the lie stepped into the light and tried to take its place beside me, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't strike back. I stood still. And my son stood for me. If you've ever found yourself erased in a room full of people who should have seen you, I hope this story reminds you, you are not invisible, you are not voiceless, and you are not alone. We don't always get to choose the ending, but sometimes, dignity is the best kind of revenge. If this story moved you, if you've ever had to hold your head high while the world tried to shrink you, please take a moment to leave a comment, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Revenge Runs Deep for more true stories of silence shattered, legacies reclaimed, and justice that doesn't always scream. Tell me, have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you? Did someone ever stand up for you when it mattered most? Or did you have to do it yourself? Your voice matters here. Thank you for listening.